4th down, the final play, unless they can stick it in the end zone. Dorsey under pressure, throws it, incomplete. The Buckeyes win.
Ezekiel Elliott, and he's got an opening. Elliott off to the races. Can they catch him?
Feature the two backs as receivers, and now a downfield shot on first down for the end zone. Touchdown, Ohio State strikes first. Making the judgments again, and there is Smith running free, breaks a tackle. Ohio State strikes quickly from 45 yards. Pressure comes. Short, knock it out, and gets out. Jack Short coming down the sidelines. Ohio State scoop and score and dagger from 82 yards.
Here they come.
Heavy pressure. Howard delivers downfield. It's Smith. He's got it. Jeremiah Smith. 2025 college football national champion, Coach Ryan Day, and the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Welcome in, Buckeye Backers. We are bringing it to you live from Seattle, Washington, to the cornfields of Enid, Ohio. We are the pulse of Buckeye fans across the nation, with Seattle Matt and Buckeye Steve. Well, welcome in, Buckeye Backers. This one does not hurt quite like that Michigan game last year, but this still stings, man. Like Sonny Styles said, this is a team that should have won a national title. We were hoping for back-to-back historical teams, and got bounced first game in the college football playoffs and just utterly physically dominated the entire game. They came to hit, man. They were laying the wood and established that emotional dominance from the get-go. And Ohio State just backed down. Just backed down to it. They made their little run at the end. They made a run. But Miami was like, you know what? We're still here. We're still the more physical team. And that last drive, that's all they needed, man. Just ran the ball right through the teeth of this defense. And Rocco and Roland, oh man, Coconut, ouch. And that's the best way to describe it. The one word, ouch. My Buckeye heart is broken. And it should be, man. It should be. The problem with this season was if you say 12-2 entering the season, before anything happens, brand new quarterback, lost 14 players to the NFL, you're like, okay, not bad. But then you come out, you beat Texas, you beat Michigan, you go on a 12-0 run. Then, we start to pick up things a little bit, and we're like, all right, this team's good. Now we're experienced. Now everyone's a year older. We expected a lot. We expected excellence out of this team. And what did they do? Man, just physically dominated 2 games in a row. Absolutely physically dominated at the line of scrimmage. That's where football starts. You can't establish anything if you don't have the physicality up front. Ohio State just didn't have it the last 2 games against the best 2 teams that they played.
They didn't, man. And I think it's really, I don't want to say easy, but I think it's really easy to get yourself motivated in games when you're got a chip on your shoulder or you're the underdog. And we saw that last year where coming off that Michigan game, everyone said, you can't do this. And that is great from a psychological perspective. What we have not seen Ohio State teams do, and maybe ever, to be very honest with you, is play like champions when everyone tells them they're supposed to be champions. If you go back to the last 3 national titles, nobody expected them to do those 3 national titles. That is not the mark of a championship program, winning it when no one thinks you can. The mark of a championship program is winning when everyone expects you to. And that's what Alabama has established in the last 2 decades. That's what Georgia established going back to back. Ohio State does not do that. So they have to figure out a way when everyone is telling you you're the best to go out and prove you're the best. And they didn't against Indiana, and they sure as heck didn't do it last night against Miami.
Yeah. Talk to me a little bit about the play calling in the first half, because -3 yards rushing was the worst in Ohio State for a half, and I think it was 21 years, back to 2004.
What did I text you? What did I text you before the game?
How important rushing was going to be, how important establishing that game to get the defensive line pressure away from Sayin.
That's it. You're looking at 2 NFL rushers on that Miami front, DN. These are going to be impact defensive players in the NFL. They're that good.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to win one-on-one battles with them. And they even talked about it in the telecast where they do rotate them in because they have just high engines. They go at 100% so much that they don't play every single snap. The best way to neutralize that kind of pass rush is to establish the run. And then on top of that, what you do in maybe those third and medium or third and long situations is you look to set up screens. You constantly keep those kind of defensive ends on their heels. That way they can't pin their ears back and come after Sayin. If you do not establish a run and you do not establish those screens to make them second guess themselves when they're running upfield, they're going to eat you alive. And they absolutely ate you alive. It was atrocious play calling, not from their inability to establish the run. I didn't see one screen by and large throughout that. I mean, I would have gone a couple back-to-back screens just to keep them on their toes. And then especially in the fourth quarter, I know you want to have players out in routes, but you should have been chipping Bain every single play. Every pass play, you should have been chipping him. Keep knocking him out. Make one guy hit him, then a second guy come after him. It was some of the worst play calling I've seen since that Michigan game last year.
Was that going to be a wide receiver bubble screen that was taken to the house?
I wouldn't even call that. I don't know. That's a tough screen call, to be honest with you, because that's more of a quick throw, like an extension of the run game. I'm talking a true screen, right, where you take the ball, your linemen get established, whether you want to call that a jailbreak wide receiver screen on the inside or a classic running back screen. Those are the kind of screens I'm talking about. That what we saw from that pick six, that I don't know if I'd classify that as a screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's hard to classify those. You know, some people call them a wide receiver or like bubble screen on the outside, but
maybe
not really. Only because, you know, you have the guys going downfield, you're throwing up behind the line of scrimmage, and you're almost letting them release until you can get a block. But
not your traditional screen, though. I think the audience knows what we're talking about when we say traditional screen.
Correct.
We can all visualize that.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you have to neutralize.
Mm-hmm.
And again, this is something Cleveland Browns fans can relate to watching people play against Myles Garrett. And we see it every single week against Myles Garrett, the best defensive end in college or in the NFL, where you're constantly seeing double, triple teamed every single play because these NFL coaches understand when you have an elite pass rusher going against you, you have to just constantly hit them, constantly knock them, double teams, triple teams, even in the run game. And that's how you also neutralize a guy like Myles Garrett too, is a lot of times you run the football. Mm-hmm. You just take them out of the play. So I thought their inability to establish the run was extremely impactful in this game. And I thought the fact that there were no screens or no chipping showed an arrogance in play calling.
I actually want to expound upon that because I agree with you that there was no adjustments. This has kind of been a staple of the Ryan Day program. You do not make adjustments in the first half. You wait till halftime. We're sticking to our guns. We're doing what we came out here to do no matter what. And that works against Rutgers. That works against Purdue. Because you can make those adjustments at halftime and just out-physical them or out-athlete them. But it doesn't work against playoff teams. It doesn't work a lot of times against teams that are talent equivalent. The Michigans, the Penn States. That's why you get into the positions where you can't get out of. And that's what they did yesterday. That's what they did yesterday, man. They just stuck to their guns. We're not making any adjustments. You know, an elementary football coach knows how you neutralize that defensive pass rush. Screens. running game. They came out and did it the second half, but everyone watching that TV that knew a little bit of football knew we needed to run the ball. And when we did, good things happened, man. I just don't understand. It perplexes me why that's something that has to wait until halftime to be adjusted. You have coaches up in the box for a reason, seeing the entire field. You have analysts on the team. You have other coaches on the team. There should be some communication about things like this.
It's not difficult, to your point, to adjust, especially in December, right? We talked about this a lot early on in September, right? You're not showing the full playbook. You haven't opened up the full playbook yet. No coach does that. You build on all these concepts. However, in October, you should have these concepts and these packages in place. And you should be able, even though you come in with a certain script and a certain concept of packages, there's nothing that says you can't go back to a certain package or a set that you played in October. You know, coaches naturally build off their playbook throughout the entire season. And you're right, they didn't adapt. And we saw that adjustment. But what we saw really was a pattern of slow starts the last 3 games. And you saw it against Michigan. You were down. Even though you were up against Indiana at halftime, it was 10-6 at halftime, right? You started slow that first half, and they started incredibly slow against Miami, and Miami took advantage of that. You cannot start slow against elite teams like Indiana and Miami, and you paid for it.
And I think Cristobal said before the game, you know, on field when they interview him, fast, violent, physical, and relentless. And they played exactly how he said, man. They were violent, they were relentless, they were fast, they were physical. And it was obvious up front. I mean, you know, all the social media trolls are going back to Lou Holtz was right. Ryan Day's soft. This team is soft. No, it's not the team is soft. It's just that they're not playing to their strengths. And I don't think that they ever really, honestly, this whole season established an offensive identity. They didn't know who they were. And that's why it was showing in the slow starts in these bigger games. Because they don't really know what their bread and butter is. They don't. They don't know what type of team they are. They don't know what they can rely on. So they just kind of go for a hodgepodge of things, but they stick with it, which is still perplexing to me. I don't understand why you just stick with your game plan and don't make adjustments. I get that you can make more adjustments at halftime, but why wasn't there any semblance of a running game in the first half? It's just like they kept getting attacked. They kept getting thrown in the dirt. Sayin was sacked 3 times in the first 18 minutes. 3 times in the first 18 minutes. And they still drop back and pass. And deep routes, too. Like, there were guys open. There was just not time to get them the ball.
You're not going to consistently complete those 10 to 20-yard passes against a pass rush like Miami. You're not. No team is. That's not – if that's your game plan, that's a terrible game plan. I think, again, you have to look at your game plan against the opponent you're playing. Correct. You know, we talk about this concept of Ohio State throughout the year was we're playing against ourselves. We're going out there and seeing what we can do and how we can improve. That's a good mindset to have. At the same point, it's, okay, what offensive concepts are going to neutralize their weaknesses? Or neutralize their strengths, my apologies, or enhance their weaknesses. So that's not saying I'm going to call whatever plays I want to call and we're just going to beat this team because my plays are better than your team. That's not effective when you play against the town of Miami or the town of Indiana. What you do is you script your plays to beat that defense that day. And he doesn't do that. Again, this went back. That first half, honestly, that entire game, it felt like the Michigan game last year, where they were going to do whatever the hell they wanted to do, and they were not scripting to Miami's defense.
I fully agree with that. I'm 100% within it. Like, because my initial assessment is where is their weakness on this defense? It's their linebackers. Attack the middle of the field, which is what they had done pretty much all year in games that they did well in, because everyone was playing back, trying to keep these wide receivers in front of them. Take those curls. I would have been curl, maybe even quad curls for the first few drives, and then run the ball. Get Bo Jackson the ball. And it worked in the second half. They started hitting those center routes, but more passing attacks opened up after they were running the ball. I think what happens is they get so boggled down and stubborn with certain approaches that they just can't get out of it. It's like, all right, I need to pass the ball to open up the run, because that's what worked last year at the end of the season. Well, you got to feel out the game a little bit. You got to see, hey, this game is different than the last game. This game is different than last year. What do I need to do here? I need to run first to open up the pass, because I need to attack the weaknesses, like you said. There was no plan to attack the weaknesses, it didn't seem like, until halftime. And that's too late. When you're playing a methodical offense like Ohio State is, and they've been playing it all year, they're not going to change who they are. You know, they did last year going into the playoffs. They changed who they were. But I don't think that can be a plan indefinitely. You can't just say, hey, I'm going to be this type of team all year long, practice this all year long in live reps, and then all of a sudden I'm going to turn up the gas when I need to. That's why I didn't like that approach. I mean, everyone talked me into it. Oh, yeah, they're saving these guys till the end. They're saving these guys to the end. You need to practice stepping on that gas. You need to practice to see how you're going to do it, and you need that mentality with that practice. I'm going to beat you doing what we do best, but also focusing on how we can attack you. And more to your point, you have to script the game for attacking the other team, and they had too much practice scripting the game to what they wanted to do. Too much practice running the ball when they couldn't run the ball earlier in the season. Too much practice in 14 personnel when they had no business being in it. Get in the different modes that you need to get in. If you establish that confidence, that swagger all year long on offense, maybe you have it going into this game too. But you didn't establish it because you wanted to try things that you didn't know you were good at yet.
But I think we could argue last year they didn't establish their swagger or their offense until the playoff. I think we all saw in that Tennessee game last year almost a completely different offense. We didn't see any real packages or concepts in that Tennessee game that we saw the first 12 games of the year by and large. And I'm sure you could point to a few here and there. But I mean, just the uniqueness of the counters off the counter, the uniqueness of the play calling, even against Oregon. I remember that first drive, watching Jeremiah Smith in motion, things we hadn't seen all year. You were seeing it against Oregon. I thought they got a little complacent against Texas, and the score kind of indicated that. But they also opened it up against Notre Dame as well, too. But the point is if you take that Tennessee, Oregon, Texas, Notre Dame games, they all looked unique. They all looked different. Mm-hmm. I think if you look back at Michigan, Indiana, Miami this year, they look the same. I thought there was a complacency or a lack of creativity in the play call, and it starts to ask yourself, was that Ryan Day or was that Chip Kelly who did what he did last year? Because I thought the offense really was lacking that ability to attack the defense each week and not say, we're going to put our packages in. We're going to create things that attack their weaknesses and exploit them.
Let's get in the locker room a little bit, because I want to talk about this with Todd. So Todd from the locker room says, I have to be honest. If all I saw was the second half, I would have thought that both teams had the same level of physicality. It was just the beginning that Miami looked more physical. Yes, but they set the tone with that. And it kind of glided all the way into that last drive. Yeah, Ohio State came out and they got the momentum back and they kept answering, but they were so far in the hole that all it took was one drive at the end of the game for Miami to be like, all right, let's get this dominance back. We still got it. We've been killing these guys all game. We've been out hitting them, out physicaling, out rushing them, out blocking them. And so they turned it on again because they already had that established. Football is an emotional game. We talk about this all the time. You have to establish physicality from the get-go and make your opponent quit. You got to make your opponent be like, I know I'm going to get hit. Remember Tate when he kind of reached out for that ball and didn't go full in and grab it? Those are the type of plays you get when you're getting hit, when you're getting the lumber knocked into you. You're getting hit in the head with a 2x4. You feel that, and you know that, and you know it's coming. And so you do a little bit of reaching, trying to avoid that hit. You do a couple things like that. You're on the offensive line trying to block, trying to get that push. You're not as quick jumping out and getting that block. Sometimes you don't get lower because you're worried you're going to get knocked in the mouth. And they got knocked in the mouth and took some plays off, and that's what happened. You see Stunny Styles coming, making that contact high. Didn't get low enough. Didn't get low enough to make that tackle. And that works. You can do that against non-talent equivalent teams. But you got to get your form right, and you got to bring it. Because those guys are going to run through you, just as Mark Fletcher did in that play. And yeah, I don't want to call out Sonny Styles for one play or Carnell Tate for one play. I'm just saying, all across the team, football's an emotional game. You need to establish that identity of, I'm going to be the one that takes you to the woodshed and beats you up. But you know who did? Miami did it the entire game. And I guess I shouldn't say the entire game because there was that point where Ohio State got the momentum back and they were the boss for a little bit. But it's too little, too late. And like this Canes fan says, Miami punched everyone in the mouth. We tried to tell you guys, but you're too arrogant. And I think there's some semblance to that. Yeah. Mario Cristobal's 2-0 against Ryan Day. So he's established that physicality against Ryan Day. And, when they came in with Oregon and beat Ohio State with Mario Cristobal, it was a terrible defense, let's be honest with you. And so it was easier to do. But this game, man, he earned it. He earned everything he's done, and he's proud, as a former Cane himself. More power to him, man, because you saw the pride coming back in at the U with that game.
Yeah, I mean, telling us how great you are and then calling us arrogant is quite the contradiction there. Miami played better. Miami played better. They did. They came out and they played. Well, first off, Mean Green, we're going to hit on that because I'm tired of glossing over this, and I keep saying it, and Steve won't talk about it. We're going to talk about it, but I do want to get one quick thing in. Miami's offensive game plan was brilliant. And why I say that is look what they were doing on first and second down. They weren't trying to be flashy. They weren't trying to do 5-7-step drops and throw 25-yard passes. Miami was saying, we want to get us in third and manageable as often as we can. So this first down run, 3 to 5 yards. This second down play, 3 yards passing, 4-yard run. Every time I looked up, it felt like it was 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. And that play calling is exactly how you beat a defense because it is so difficult from a defensive standpoint to defend 3rd and 3 because you can pass the ball, you can run the ball. There's so many things to look at. When you were looking at Ohio State, it felt like they were in 3rd and long every time. And you cannot go up against an elite pass rush that Miami has in 3rd and long, and you're going to survive. More often than not, you're going to lose. And that was the difference was Miami knew, hey, there's a major difference between 2nd and 8 and 2nd and 6. Fight for those 2 extra yards. And Fletcher did. He fought every run for that extra yard or 2. And we weren't stopping him. And then those dink and dunk pass plays, you've called it early on this year, you're starting to see that weakness of Patricia's defense is that very quick pass play. It's really tough to defend. He's also struggled against running quarterbacks. We saw that again. I don't know why it took them so long to get that spine concept of Styles back into play, like we had last year against Oregon and Tennessee. Beck killed you with his feet. But again, everything Miami did was about get to third and manageable, and then let's execute the first downs. Let's keep the ball away from that offense. Let's wear that defense down with those body blows. That's how you neutralize an elite defense. I thought Cristobal had an amazing offensive game plan against this defense, and one of the many reasons they won.
Well, we're going to bring in Blake Biscardi, but before we do, we'll get back a little bit more to the locker room. You said you wanted to talk about
I do.
Situation. So let's go ahead and jump into it.
It's atrocious. It's atrocious. It can no longer be glossed over. If you go look up at, Michigan, right? They had Moody and Zavada the last, 5-6 years. They've been able to have a kicking game that can make 50-yard field goals or consistently make field goals in college football. That was a major difference. I felt like you get that 3 points even at the end of halftime, and you start saying to yourself, okay, we have some momentum. We didn't get shut out. We come out and get a touchdown. This is a one-score game still. There's a lot of momentum there, and I kept thinking all along, there's no way in the world any Buckeye fan feels comfortable if this is a 3-point game and Sayin is driving down the field and we have to do it. I kept having those flashbacks of that Georgia game 4 years ago on New Year's Eve. The kicking game is terrible. We need to find that established kicker that's basically everything under 50 needs to be close to automatic. And if Ryan Day's not going to address the kicking game, you're going to have big problems against really good teams like the Miamis of the world. I mean, and he's right. We lost the Michigan game last year. Fielding missed 2 field goals in that game. People don't talk about. Go back to Indiana. Look at the Miami game too. It was a major difference. Kicking game in the last 3 losses has been a factor.
A lot of the Miami fans say, I'm not going to put a lot of this up here, but if it makes sense, I'm going to, because we're going to have our Miami trolls, of course, and more power to you. It's just not going to be a troll show. We're not going to put up with that. But if you're putting in good comments, I'm going to throw them up there. And they got their clap back. They said, I told you guys, Ohio State has a weak offensive line. It showed. I don't think they used it right, as we said earlier. You have to be able – you have generational defense.
Yeah.
You have first-round defensive ends. So you have to play the game like you're playing against 2 first-round defensive ends, and Ohio State didn't play that way. There was no showing. There was no help. It was, we're going to go one-on-one with Bain, and it didn't work. It won't work.
No, it won't work. Bain is a first-round talent, and Mesidor played himself maybe into the first round with the way he played as well too. So when you're going up against that kind of talent, no offensive line. And again, go watch the NFL when they go up against an elite pass rusher. There's a lot of great offensive lines in the NFL to get obliterated by the TJ Watts and the Chris Joneses and the Myles Garretts of the world. It doesn't mean they're weak. It just means those defensive players are really good. And Miami's line was incredible. It was the job of the coaching staff to neutralize that defensive line, and they failed to do so.
Yeah, they pretty much called the score too, 17-10, and without that last, I'm going to give you a touchdown to kind of get a chance. That was pretty close, almost right on.
Yeah, that low scoring game. It's you kind of think of the offenses when you go into that game, but the defenses were certainly a key factor there.
This is a big topic, and I just don't think the sample size is large enough yet to actually say that has an effect. Yeah, the teams that had buys are 0-5, but I talked to Blake a little bit about this beforehand, so after we get through these comments, I'll have him chime in to what he said, because last year Ohio State had time off before they played Tennessee. I think it's just you get that. What happens is you get your momentum going, you get your physicality back, So if both teams have time off beforehand, a month off, it's different. You got to kind of get back into the groove of things, get used to getting hit again. Because we'll see. We got to see more data points to know if that's actually true. And then if that's true, the rest of this playoff, if the team that had a bye week loses, you're going to see the calls for the expansion, which are already there. You're just going to see them get louder and louder and louder so that these teams kind of go into it evenly. I don't want to make that excuse for Ohio State because I don't think it's true. I think you got to come out and you got to be ready to play.
Yeah, I don't like that excuse at all. And I think, to your point, there's not enough data points because they kept touting the 0-4 last year, but the seeding last year was not the best 4 teams. It was the highest 4 conference champions. So you had Arizona State and Boise State getting byes last year that were not comparable teams. They weren't the 4 best teams in the country. So that skews your data right there. But again, you look at this Miami team, and I think Ohio State fans can start and say they look a lot like Ohio State last year, right? Texas A&M was that favorite. They weren't expected to go into College Station and win. They go in and they win against a good team. And now they go in that second round and they dominate the team that nobody thought they would. Again, Ohio State last year playing Oregon. I think Miami has that look of the Ohio State team last year, and I think they're going to be a very, very dangerous out.
Yeah. Mario Cristobal has that edge to him, it seems, too.
This year he does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he's back at his alma mater, and he's showing the dominance, man. I don't know that they can withstand just because offensively. I think Ohio State just wasn't ready for it, wasn't ready to get punched like they were, and they got punched in the mouth. I mean, this comment's perfect. It tells you the game. We've punched teams in the mouth before, so, I'm not going to cry. Sometimes you end up on the receiving end. Plus, we just won last year. We'll be okay. And in this, Ohio State could have had Adam Vinatieri out there, but they weren't winning that game last night. They got bullied. And you're right.
They did. They got bullied. But people miss the concept of the psychology of football. When you get points on the board, it helps you. When it's a 14-10 game, or you could really be honest, if they had that extra 3 points, you're talking what? 17, you're talking 17-10, and then I'm pretty sure Ohio State scored afterwards. That's a 17-17 game. Your defense plays different at that point. Everybody looks at it different because it's not, we can't give up anything. It's even if we give up something, we're going to come back and neutralize that. So points matter from a psychological standpoint. But you're right. I'm not going to gloss over the fact that Miami was the better team last night. They were the more physical team last night, and their game plan from both sides of the football was brilliant.
I agree. Can we get we need this. Can we get some Nick Mangold, Doug Daddish type linemen? We need nastiness because we have too much talent.
I mean, we weren't saying this a month ago. When we saw the nastiness in Ann Arbor utterly dominate in the snow. We weren't saying this a month ago. I think you have to just truly give credit to that Miami defensive line. I think it's a combination. I think it's the talent of the Miami defensive line. They were focused, locked in, knew exactly what they needed to do to wreck the game, and they did. And also bad play calling from Ohio State. Bad execution and play calling from that coaching staff. It was a combination of the two. I don't know if you can do that because you can't sit around and praise them for their work a month ago and then say how atrocious they are today.
Yeah. I don't agree with this, but I'm going to put it up here. Ohio Buckeye Mark. I don't know if Sayin has that dog in him to pull in a run when he needs to instead of holding on to. I think that's been also a staple of Ryan Day's offense. That quarterback is not allowed to run the ball. Absolutely no running the ball. You stand back there behind the line of scrimmage. They could have neutralized the defense with a little bit of running from Sayin. You saw Carson Beck run when he needed to, when it was open. Hopefully, that's just a sign of things to come as he grows. I think what we saw was Sayin is a young quarterback. We didn't see that in the beginning of the season because they were able to neutralize that by him getting the ball out just really quick and the offensive line protect. They didn't play defensive lines that they couldn't handle. When they go against a defensive line that your offense can't handle, sometimes the running quarterback is a way to neutralize it too. And you saw that one. I can't remember at what point of the game it was, but even the announcers were like, he could have
going into halftime.
Yeah, it was going into halftime. Yeah, he was wide open. But I think, again, it goes back to the mentality of it too. He was like, I just got to throw the ball away. I've been getting hit over and over and over and over again. I spent more time on the turf than I have since the Big Ten championship game. And you get that feeling. You get rushed up in your head because you know the hits are coming. And I think the kid's going to be a stud. Just give it some time. And I hope Ryan Day sees, and whoever our offensive coordinator is next, sees that a running quarterback can help neutralize the pressure.
That's a tough one going into halftime because you're being told 5,000 times you cannot take a sack. You cannot take a sack. Throwing the ball away is a very effective play with clock management there. However, this is now 2 times in 2 years with 2 quarterbacks. You've seen them not understand game concept, where when they snapped that ball, there were 16 seconds, approximately, right? I'm not going to swear by it. He could have ran up. He could have got an extra 5 yards, right? Slid down, probably around 11 or 10 seconds. Would have gotten you the first down. That was 3rd and 2 at that time. Would have gotten the first down, would have taken a 49-yarder, made a 44-yard field goal, could have got everybody back to the line, spiked the ball, plenty of time. You had plenty of time to scramble for 5 yards, spike the ball, get a field goal attempt. That was a bad game management by Sayin. And he's a redshirt freshman, right? So benefit of the doubt. But if you go back to the Oregon game last year and now this game this year, that's where you have to start to question, hey, if you have a chance to get 5 yards, go run and get 5 yards, pick up the first down, spike the football. If you don't and you feel that pressure really tight on you, throw the ball away. But the whole field was open to him. He wasn't in a pocket.
And I agree with you. I'm going to go into this comment, and then we're going to bring Blake Biscardi on. So Ohio State needs a quarterback that Urban Meyer used to recruit. Not just a quarterback, but playmakers. Sayin is a pure quarterback, a game manager, and not a playmaker. When the structure of the play breaks down, he's a good quarterback, not elite yet. I think you need a blend. I don't think that you want to have just a running quarterback. You need to have a good quarterback that can sling the ball. I love JT Barrett, but I want a quarterback that can pass the ball well. But he also needs to be able to run. I mean, you can have your cake and eat it too, and I think that's what we need. We need a quarterback that's willing to run the ball, not just a quarterback that sits in the pocket. And I think a lot of that's on Ryan Day himself. He wants a quarterback to sit back in the pocket. He wants to establish the passing game and keep his eyes downfield. And I think there's a fine balance there. But when Sayin has an open run, you got to take what the defense gives you. It's just like taking that check down pass. If it's there, if the defense is just going to give it to you, you take it. Blake, welcome on, man. You're there, seeing it live. How was the feeling in the press box? I know it's got to be a little bit emotional for you, and not a good emotion.
Well, Steve, again, I appreciate you having me on. The feeling in the press box was a little bit tense, but frustrated if you're looking at it from how the fans see this. You could see up there the entire night. I didn't really have a huge issue with the play calling for the most part in the game because obviously sitting with the bird's eye view, you can see the whole field and what's open and what's not. There were guys running open last night that Sayin could have hit. And what you guys have been talking about with the offensive line and how Sayin played sped up last night and he was rushed, those were really the reasons Ohio State could not execute. The offensive line couldn't protect him. They couldn't block up front. And earlier in the week, Ryan Day was asked, how do you take away or mitigate Miami's defensive edge rushers, and he goes, "We'll block them." And it's everyone kind of laughed off the answer, but he's right. And Ohio State was not able to do that, no matter what offensive line combination, tight end combination they had in there. I know we saw a lot more C.J. Donaldson than many probably expected last night for pass protection reasons. Saraville he got hurt on that deep ball to Jeremiah Smith, played through it, wasn't able to go in the second half. So then we saw Ian Moore come in. You had Josh Padilla, you had Gabe Van Sickle. The lights got a little bit bright, it felt like, for him. So all the different combinations for Ohio State, they just could not get it right for the full 60 minutes. They put some good drives together, especially in the second half. But to me, watching it, I'm seeing, okay, the offensive game plan, I really wasn't mad at it. I thought it was fine. They just didn't give themselves the ability to execute that game plan. If Julian said needed 4 or 5 seconds for the plays to develop, he was getting 2 or 3 seconds to throw. Sometimes 3.5 to 4. And that's really how you're looking at it, is they had opportunities, but Ohio State could not fully create them in the moment because they couldn't block and then they couldn't execute.
Matt, I'll let you rebuttal because I know you disagree a little bit, and I think it's a combination of both. Like when you're seeing those plays develop from up above, but you're not able to withstand the pressure, something's got to change. Like even though wide receivers are open, if you can't get them the ball because there's so much pressure, something has to give. You have to change your game plan in order to compensate for those deficiencies. And it just didn't happen until the second half. And I'm still perplexed on why that happens. And it's a consistent thing with Ohio State that they do not like to change their game plan until after halftime. And I really just don't know why. I don't know what it has to be, just pure arrogance. That's the only word I can come up with. If you don't want to change, you're going to get hit in the mouth. Your quarterback's going to be laying on the turf. Why do you keep doing the same thing?
But that's part of the problem is, again, you can't have these offensive play calls where you say, hey, we need 4 seconds or 5 seconds. We'll get wide receivers open against an elite pass rush. You can't do that. Those don't go together. So that's bad offensive play calling. And then the lack of chipping on Bain, I thought was unacceptable. I would have every pass play had one of my tight ends chipping, one of my running backs chipping. I would have made that, because chipping is how you buy yourself that extra 1 to 2 seconds. And that is the difference, to your point. 3 seconds getting the ball out versus 4 seconds getting the ball out could be the difference of a wide receiver getting open and not getting open. And so I thought the lack of chipping on Bain was a major factor. And even that final drive, I kept saying, Bain's going to eat him alive. It's one-on-one against the right tackle. He's going to eat him alive. Any great defensive end pinning their ears back on one-on-one is going to win that. So Coach Day talking about, well, we're just going to block him. You don't do that against elite pass rushers. That's a bad concept.
And no, you're absolutely right with that too. And we saw that a couple of different times. I mean, on that pick 6, Jeremiah Smith missed a block. Earlier, before that even happened, Max Clare missed a block on a big moment. And you see those kinds of things happen. And yeah, if your offense is scoring and you're playing Rutgers, all right, you missed the block, you get the next one. But everything gets magnified in big games like this. And that's why every single detail matters of the game. And then even with Sayin too, Matt, right to your point, where they're not chipping and he's rushed, or he has 1 or 2 less seconds to throw. Why don't you start moving the pocket? Because Julian Sayin's eyes were affected yesterday. He was going through his progressions a little faster, or he had to come off them so quick, he didn't have time to really diagnose what the defense was doing because someone was always in his face. So why not slide your protection, move the pocket, cut the field in half, and then have them work to a side? That's how I thought they were going to come out in the second half. I thought we were going to see half a field for the first 2 drives or so in the second half, and almost like in basketball where they say you just need to see one go through the net, hit a layup or a free throw. That's honestly what I thought was going to happen. That's what I said at halftime. I said, all right, he's got to hit a layup real quick. Just dink and dunk, give him easy rhythmic throws just to find a way to settle in and start moving forward, because The 2-minute drill, when they got the ball out quick, that first minute at the end, they executed perfect.
Yeah.
And then they slowed down. The drive just stalled. And so you knew the capability was there. And sometimes it takes that when your offense is in a funk or when the game plan's not going as you thought. Sometimes it takes getting put in that 2 to 4 minute drill scenario to flip the switch and then you're fine, which is almost what happened for Ohio State. But then they just couldn't close there at the end of the game because penalties or some self-inflicted wound or miscue was always present. And Ohio State dug themselves too deep of a hole of when Miami executed well, because I think between the two quarterbacks, you saw Julian Sayin's youth and inexperience. And I think the world of him. But again, you're not going to know until you're in a moment like that how you respond. That's not something that can really be simulated to a degree. And then you saw Carson Beck. He wasn't special, but Carson Beck played like a veteran.
Mm-hmm.
That was my takeaways. Okay, he played smart veteran football. He made the plays with his legs when he had to. And Julian Sayin said it post-game, he said, I should have made some plays with the legs. I held onto the ball a little bit too much, or I took a sack, and that put us in tougher situations. Again, it's a growing process. Julian Sayin is a great quarterback. But we have to remember that he's a redshirt freshman, and unfortunately, perspective doesn't always exist in Buckeye Nation with this fan base. But for that, looking at those two quarterbacks, you could see which one was the veteran and which one had the inexperience, which will now be invaluable for Sam moving forward. Just unfortunate that it leads to a loss.
I want to touch on one point that you made, the layups or having the free throw. You need to see the ball go through the net. I think they tried that with that wide receiver screen, and that was the wrong play to make at the wrong time and bad execution. I think that was their attempt at getting an easy pass for Saying to get a little bit of a rhythm, and it went for 6 the other way. I don't like that was the call for it. That's not personally what I call. I don't really like those plays at all because they're very low percentage plays. And I get it. It spreads out the defense a little bit. And I think that's where their angle was going. Their mind was going like, all right, we need to get something out wide, spread out this defense a little bit more to give us some room. And to get Julian Sayin a quick, easy pass. Where I would have liked to see it is over the middle, curls. Something quick, curl over the middle, in and out. Anything quick and over the middle where you can get 1, 2-step, 3-step drop maybe. Because you're playing in shotgun anyway, so you don't need a lot of drop. You just need to get the ball out quick. Something designed to get the ball out quick. And they started to do that. They did it in the 2-minute offense. They were hitting it over the middle, and it worked. They also did that after they established the run game. That's what I would have liked to see in Seattle. You got anything more on that?
Yeah. Again, what you're looking at going into this game is an elite defensive line of Miami, and how do you neutralize that? And there are a few ways to neutralize that, where you establish the run, or to your point, Blake, about some easy layups. I keep screaming at screens, right? Screens, shuffle passes. That is going to neutralize Bain rushing upfield constantly. Even that slip screen, the shuffle pass, the easy screen to a wide receiver. Those are easy layups that you're talking about, and they make defensive ends maybe have a half a step delay because they keep rushing upfield and they keep getting burned on screens. So those are the two things that you do to neutralize that. And what you do against the defensive line is, if you're running the ball and you're throwing those screens and you're making them second guess, that stuff manifests in the third and fourth quarter because those body blows wear them out. They were fresh and ready to go going in the second half because they weren't neutralized. So I do go back to all this being bad offensive concepts and play calling. I do put this on the coaches.
We were talking about that too, Matt, pregame, of how do you neutralize the Miami defense. And yes, you use the screens, you use all those things to attack. You can run at the pass rush if you want to. But also, Ohio State should have played with more tempo throughout the game because Miami's not a team that rotates a lot. And so there was no point in time where Miami looked gassed or tired. And there were times when Ohio State did because they were on the field a lot because Miami was the team sustaining drives. And they were running the football, or Carson Beck would extend a drive with his legs and converting a 3rd and 11 with his legs. I mean, you get a great setup to have a stop, and you allow Carson Beck to go get 12 yards with his legs. That's the stuff that can't happen. And Steve, circling all the way back to your point with that screen call that you didn't like, it's one of those things that if it works, great, you're a genius. If it doesn't work, you're an idiot. And on that play, yeah, maybe it's not the ideal throw, but yeah, it is designed for that rhythm, and that's an extension of the run game. We know Ryan Day likes to do that, but that was the play Jeremiah Smith missed the block. And if Jeremiah Smith doesn't miss a block, Keontae Scott is not running 72 yards in the other direction for a touchdown. And maybe that play gets 4 yards, maybe it goes for a touchdown. We don't know. But again, there was a miscue on that play for Ohio State.
How often do you see those type of plays go for a touchdown, though?
Not often. And even if it's just a couple yards, okay, if you want to stay on schedule 3 or 4 yards, that's fine. But yeah, there's better ways to get it, depending on your philosophy. And
correct.
But I think you got to give credit to Scott on that one.
It was a film play.
Because what I hated about that play was it was very unique. You had
it was telegraphed.
Trips to the left, and then you had the motion of Claire. I guarantee if we all go back and look at film, that play exists somewhere, whether it's Purdue or
Keontae Scott said
Illinois. He saw that. He read that right away. He's like, I've seen that on film. I know what's happening. Yes, you can talk about Smith getting that block. If you really watch that play, Scott read it before Smith could.
Before Smith did.
Yeah, before he could react, he saw that play. That was a terrible play call because of the uniqueness of that formation. And Scott had seen it. Scott did his homework. Scott's an athlete, and he executed. That's on Miami's defense. And again, you can't put that kind of play out again because he clearly saw it. He clearly knew what was happening. Bad play calling.
Yeah, or you can pump fake the screen and then have someone coming over the middle because you know it's going to get jumped because it is so telegraphed. Because you can see it happening. I mean, you knew where the ball was going. The whole world knew what was happening when you saw that formation. Why not fake it and then bring Carnell Tate right over the middle or Brandon Ennis right over the middle? Or even Jeremiah Smith coming over.
What we saw last year in the playoffs.
I don't know that there was time for
creativity.
Is we saw these different concepts building off of things they had done throughout the year last year. Again, we called it the counter for lack of a better word, but they were throwing in these unique wrinkles where, okay, I've seen that on film, and then I'm going to do something different on that. That lack of creativity was not there last night.
They started a couple counter schemes with Bo Jackson in the second half, but they didn't. It worked well, very well. Yeah. I want to get to Holy Buckeye because this is a great comment. It's pretty much summarized our show so far. I think Holy Buckeye came in late. We got plowed. Miami was a tougher, more physical team. They were hitting us hard all night. We played 10 yards off the receivers. Ryan Day has never ran a quarterback. I doubt that changes much. And I agree, we need to be a threat there. Tough loss. We will be back in the mix next year.
Blake, since you had that bird's eye view, I am curious, what were you seeing from the defense? Were they playing more man-to-man, Ohio State's defense? Were they playing more man-to-man with any safety help, or were they playing zone? Because I think that's a great point. You were seeing Igmanosin and Sanchez playing 8-10 yards off. And again, Miami's philosophy was we're happy getting 3-4 yards of play because we're going to get ourselves in third and manageable. So they were taking advantage of that. What were you seeing from a defensive concept out there?
I think you saw a mix like we've seen all season where they were in man. Sometimes they were in zone. Sometimes there was a mix there. But there were times, like you said, that they're playing off the ball, which was for the most part. And Miami looked at that. And this is what I was saying. You see Carson Beck being a veteran here. Carson Beck didn't need to hit a deep ball. Carson Beck didn't need a 20-yard post. He didn't need a 17-yard corner route. Carson Beck said, okay, I've got 4 yards here. I'm hitting that pass because we're going to stay on schedule. And that was essentially just like a great running game. It's 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They did that through the passing game. That was their offense last night. And then Mark Fletcher was able to execute sometimes in some big runs. They started on the outside. They were spreading Ohio State out early, and they worked in the middle toward the later part of the game. And I know, Matt, you said earlier that Mario Cristobal had a great game plan, and he did. And then the comment from Holy Buckeye saying Miami was the more physical team, they were from the beginning. You saw it with big hits. You saw it. I mean, there were some debatable targeting calls, and I'm not saying I wanted them called because football needs to be football. You need to be able to hit hard. But Miami was taking the shots that were those borderline. Okay, could they throw a flag there? Probably if it's soft, but they really let the teams play last night, which was good.
Yeah.
But Miami was taking advantage of that because they were laying the lumber on some hits. They were taking that opportunity anytime that they could to say, we are more physical than you. come get into an absolute street fight with us. Because if you look back at how Ohio State has lost in each of the last few times that they've lost, it's been in this style matchup where the other team said, we are going to outman you. And then we're going to out-tough you. And you're not. And then there's the miscues that Ohio State always has. And then special teams with kicking is a whole other deal. But you miss a field goal and you throw a pick six, that's 10 points that are left. And then you don't score on the drive with the pick six, either 3 or 7. So that could be either 13 or 17 points there that switches the game. And if those two things don't happen, Ohio State might have won last night.
But I think you hit on a great point with the losing. If you look back at the last 3 Ohio State losses, they were favored.
Yep.
If you look at the playoffs, by and large, they weren't really expected. Even if the point spread was favoring Ohio State by a little bit, they were still that 8 seed. They were still the underdog in a lot of games. So do you feel like there's a problem at Ohio State being the more physical team, being the better team against great competition when they are the favorite?
I do think that's been a common theme, and I wonder how you fix that, because it hasn't changed, because last year in the college football playoff, Ohio State was the more physical team. So Ohio State has the ability. It's just, why were they not last night? That's what was surprising to me. Now, wins and losses, they happen in football. If Ohio State lost straight up last night, okay, they lost straight up last night. But it was how Ohio State lost, and what was surprising is everyone talked about the offensive line, the defensive line for Miami, and how it was better than Ohio State. And historically, when that happens, Ohio State shows up. Because there's not many opportunities for Ohio State, Matt, to your point, where Ohio State's normally the favorite. Ohio State was the favorite. Ohio State doesn't get the chance to say, hey, we're being doubted, or hey, they don't believe in us, or hey, we're not favored. They don't get that very often. So when you do, normally that program takes advantage of it. And they looked good in practice. They were really healthy at the skill positions. They were not on the offensive line. That's why teams are built from the inside out, not the outside in. And it reared its ugly head because the offensive line wasn't fully healthy, but it didn't matter what combination was in last night. They still weren't blocking Miami. So I'm not going to say, hey, because of injuries, Ohio State didn't win last night. It just was poor execution across the board. And yes, these losses all look the same. And Ohio State needs to find a kicker, because the psyche of how you are approaching these games, you almost feel like you need a touchdown. In the press box, I said to the guy next to me, I want Miami to kick a field goal, so it's 20-14. So Ohio State has to get a touchdown, and it's non-negotiable. Jaden Fielding doesn't go out there.
Yeah,
because you don't have the confidence. He lines up for a 49-yard field goal. There was not really a big part of me that said, oh, he's going to make that, because I haven't seen him do it in the big leverage spots. Yes, is he good against the UCLAs of the world and the Grambling States? And Fielding's a good kicker, but when the lights get bright, Fielding's not a good kicker. And what doesn't make sense to me is how you are Ohio State and you don't have a guy that can go out there and nail a field goal for you. I get it, kickers miss kicks, but in big spots, Ohio State misses kicks more than they make them.
Yeah, that's tough. And they're missing field goals. And yes, you could say, all right, it was a 49-yard field goal. But when you have the additive evidence from the Big Ten championship game and chip shot field goals, you have Michigan last year, a change needs to be. I think one of the problems at Ohio State is they're slow to change whoever's in the starting lineup. And I think a lot of that comes from just the brotherhood and Ryan Day wanting to be there for his players and wanting to make sure that they have the best mental state they can possibly have, and giving guys credit even though mistakes happen. I think a lot of this comes from practice. If you are the better team, you have to establish that physicality in practice nonstop. And you have to have that identity throughout the season. A lot of what Ohio State was doing this year, as we saw, was playing to manage the game, to have less snaps. That is where you have that I'm going to win no matter what mentality at all times. If there is a football on the field, I'm going to put that football in the end zone no matter what. That is the mentality you have to have. I don't care who I'm playing. I don't care if it's Rutgers. I don't care if it's UCLA. I'm not saving anything. I want to practice on these reps and get better and get more refined, and to get better confidence in whatever the part of the game that you're practicing is, or whatever the part of the game you need to have is, instead of being like, you know what, we could pass the ball here, but we're going to establish the running game. You saw a lot of that this year, and it was because they did have a cupcake schedule. You got to give the fans of opposing teams credit. Ohio State did have a cupcake schedule, and it showed now. When you have the time to practice in live games, reps running the ball that you wouldn't normally do in a 14 personnel, then you rely back on that in the Big Ten championship game because you're just not used to that. You kind of made that your identity, artificially made that your identity, and then you do it again against teams that are talent equivalent. It was almost like most of the season was a practice rather than actual live games.
Steve, can I add something too? That was a really big miscue in the game that's probably lost on people.
Mhm.
Ohio State had to punt with 6 minutes to go, and there was an illegal formation penalty.
Mhm.
Miami gained 20 yards from that penalty.
Mhm.
It moved Ohio State back 5 yards, but they gained 20 yards of field position.
Mhm.
That was enormous for the Hurricanes because they were going to be pinned back deep. Ohio State can rush the passer, or they can just settle down and get off the field and flip it. And they would have had good starting field position going on the next drive. But
Mhm.
instead, Miami hits a big run, and then they just go down the field, and then they end up scoring the touchdown to put the game away. But that was a huge moment in that game, getting an illegal formation penalty. Again, a special teams miscue.
Yep. Great call out. It was a 20. He caught it at the 11, and then they started at the 29 or 30. That's a major difference because if they don't get that first down and they have to punt, you're probably getting the ball at your own 40.
And it was,
and Ohio
And you're
State was
down by
putting
3
pressure.
points. Yeah.
Right.
and it was a hold. It was just called on the wrong guy. Oh, that was a different play. Sorry. But yeah, the illegal.
It was illegal.
Well, the holding call
formation.
was also one to put Ohio State back to 3rd and 20. But then on the punt, there was an illegal formation penalty.
I don't know what that was. Was there?
They said there were only 4 guys on the line.
4 guys on the
Guys on the line scrimmage. Okay.
Yeah, too many in the backfield.
You have to call that. I mean,
no, that's a straightforward call. It's bad execution from your special teams. That's what it is. It's not on the refs.
Right.
And Vance, I don't know how you could get through a podcast without giving Miami credit and taking accountability and talking about it, because that's exactly what happened. Miami
dominated.
Miami deserves all the credit in the world.
They do. They absolutely do. From their coaching staff to their players and everything in between, Miami was the better football team last night, hands down.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And Miami validated every national pundit that said the offensive line and defensive line are better. Because obviously when a team goes into a game, they go in with confidence saying we're better than you.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to run out there and talk about it. But when the pundits are saying everything and Ohio State has to hear about it, I thought Ohio State was going to be the one to show up. Miami backed it up.
Johnny, I believe you're misconstruing some of what we're saying. I don't think that the wide receiver screen out wide is what we wanted. That's not a traditional screen, as we talked about earlier. We wanted a screen over the middle. A tight end screen would have been good. A throwback tight end screen would have been great. Get traffic going one way, throw it back the other, as Blake kind of pointed out, that you could have had some misdirection stuff going on. But those screens don't really affect the defensive line like a middle screen. Something over the middle where you allow the defensive line in, they come in too quick, you burn them over top. That's what we're talking about with the screen that we needed.
Or your classic running back screen. We keep missing that. I didn't see it once. The classic running back screen, which has been a staple in football. That's what that was. What we saw from that pick 6, that was more of a bubble route or concept where you're flaring out. You're getting blockers in place. You're trying to get it. That's a bubble. We're talking that classic screen with the running back, or again, the jailbreak screen, the slip screen over the middle, the shuffle pass over the middle. These are those plays, to your point, kind of utilizing that middle of that field that neutralizes that. We're not looking for swing passes or bubble passes to the outside. That doesn't neutralize that pass rush because they don't have to. They take one step upfield. They see that it slipped out to the left. And they don't have to rush. They don't have to do anything different. You're not neutralizing a defensive line by that kind of play.
I agree. I agree with you fully. Well, Seattle, this has probably been your last show of the season, huh? The last morning after show, because there's no more morning afters.
There's no more.
That's sad to say. I thought we were going to get you waking up early on the West Coast for a few more morning after shows. But Happy New Year, man. What is in store next for Ohio State? We're going to talk about that after you jump off of here, unless there's any last final comments from you, Seattle. We're going to talk about the transfer portal because there's already been one player in it, as Blake Biscardi pointed out to me.
I'm sorry. Who's jumped in already?
Jelani Thurman, which I think is a no-brainer, really, for him. But anyway, until the next time you jump on, man. Seattle Matt, thanks for joining us every Saturday morning, bright and early on the West Coast. And peace out, dude.
Yeah. Thank you, Blake. Thank you, Buckeye Steve. Thank you, Buckeye Nation. See you in 26.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
It is 26. I just realized that. It is 26. Damn. All right. It's a new year and hopefully a new Buckeyes team for next year. So where do we go from here, Blake? What do you think is going to happen in the transfer portal? Because obviously Canes fans are all over it. JJ is coming back to the 305. I don't think that happens. I think that that's an easy thing to say right now. But I don't think that happens. Can you guys hear me on the chat? Because Blake's not hearing me right now. So in the chat, if you can or can't hear me, let me know. Chip is at Northwestern as offensive coordinator too. Blake, can you hear me yet? It looks like mine is going. Yes, they can hear me in the chat. So it's on your end, Blake, for whatever reason. You can go ahead and talk if you want to, but you're not going to hear me. Oh, can you hear me now, Blake? You hear me now? Blake lost his audio. So I don't know if this is a Canes fan or if it's a Buckeyes fan, but no matter who it is, yes, you need JJ. It doesn't matter who you're a fan of. If he's on your team, you want him. And I think with Sayin coming back, there is no reason for JJ to enter the portal. I think Ohio State's still going to give him the money he needs, and he's a Buckeye all the way. I think he's just going to bounce back, and they're going to have a better year next year. Talk about him way too much. Why wouldn't you talk about the best player in college football? And he did deliver. He had that touchdown, which was getting Ohio State back in the game. They were absolutely getting Ohio State back in the game. And Blake has no audio, doesn't know why, so he's still trying to get that fixed. So I'll still stay in the chat and talk with y'all a little bit. Let's see what does Miami do? Who does Miami want to face for all these Miami fans in the chat? Do you want Georgia? Do you want Ole Miss? Who do you think you match up better with? I would honestly say Ole Miss for now. We need O-line play. The exec. Thanks for getting back in here, the exec. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to hear from you again. And I think we're getting O-line play. That was one of the points I wanted to touch on is you have Tyler Bowen coming in here, and Tyler Bowen didn't have his guys, right? And I think Tyler Bowen is the guy that can recruit offensive line really well, and you've seen that from the start of what he's brought in right now. So you're going to see the development of the O-line the next few years under Tyler Bowen with the guys he wants, right? Like you got good guys on the offensive line. It's just not guys that have been developed under his tutelage the whole time. So we're going to see what Tyler Bowen's all about, and we're going to see what this offensive line is about. And I love that they're getting Ohio guys on the offensive line from the start. They're not letting those guys get away, go to other schools and be developed. We want them in our program, developed in our program. And it just so happens we had one of the best Ohio offensive line recruiting classes of all time. It just happened this year. So Blake, anything you want to talk about? Because we're talking about the future here. I don't know if you heard any of that, but we're getting into what's going to happen in the transfer portal, what's going to happen in 2026, And is Jeremiah Smith a candidate to enter the transfer portal? I don't think so. Canes fans want it, and then they say they don't need him. So I don't know what they're talking about, because anyone that can take Jeremiah Smith takes him. And I think he's a Buckeye all the way now.
Yeah, I don't think Jeremiah's going to go in the transfer portal. I know the Miami guys are, I'm sure, going to text him and try to get him to come home. But he's a Buckeye through and through. I don't expect him to go anywhere. But Miami just won the game, so now it's going to make everything hot and everything. But I think Ohio State needs to go to the portal on the offensive line and see if you can bring in a veteran guy or two to just help next year carry that room, because Ohio State missed on their transfers this year by comparison. And if you're going to Ohio State in 2026, what you're looking for is, how does Ryan Day handle everything post Brian Hartline? Because you're losing an elite wide receiver coach and elite recruiter, which Ohio State has great people on the staff. But I think it's going to be really important who he hires as an offensive coordinator and how they fit into the offense, and how Sayin continues to progress to bring him along, which is going to be fine because Day's a quarterback guru, and Keenan Bailey still being there as the tight ends coach and maybe getting additional or new responsibilities next year. Maybe that's a possibility. I don't think he's ready to be a coordinator yet, but Ryan Day and everybody around the program speak extremely highly of Keenan Bailey, and we know the kind of work that he's done. So I would look for that. But I think the biggest questions for Ohio State going into next year will be the offensive line, who is being hired as the offensive coordinator, and then of the lose on defense and the intelligence that you lose on defense with Caleb Downs and Sonny Styles. How do you continue to have an elite level defense next year? Maybe it's not the top defense in the country. How do you still stay in that top 10 as a defense? Because there's good talent on that defense, but it's not going to be the same situation as this year from last year. So what can Ohio State do? Is there someone they grab into the portal? Do they feel confident in those guys that they have behind them? So I think those would be the three main areas of concern and intrigue, I should say, not concern, intrigue, heading into 2026 and what Ryan Day does this offseason.
I feel like they'll reload again on the defense. I did want to touch on this from Doug, because we did talk about this, and before getting on live, about Sareveld getting hurt. He did get hurt, and you saw that from the press box where he came out for a little bit.
Yeah.
More went in. Did you see anything after the game where you felt like Sareveld was hurt?
I didn't see anything. We just heard about it up there that he had gotten hurt, and Ryan Day made the comments that he got hurt early and was not able to go in the second half. So for a guy like Sareveld, who is one of the toughest guys on the team, it had to be something notable, because he tried to play through it in the first half, and he did. He just didn't play through it well. And so unfortunately wasn't able to go in the second half. And the offensive line played a little bit better in that third quarter, toward the end of the third quarter, early fourth quarter, but then they weren't able to close the game out on that final drive.
For sure. I did ask the comment section while you were out with audio who they wanted to face. A lot of it is they either want to face Georgia or they don't care who they face. But the dynamic with Carson Beck being able to face Georgia again, I thought was interesting. Obviously, that old team, I don't know if he went out of there with like bad vibes or whatever happened with Georgia, or if he was forced out, but he went out, found himself a place in Miami, and like you said, he took care of whatever the defense gave him, played like a veteran in this game, and he's got a lot to prove in the playoffs that he belongs in the NFL. So
he does, and that this is his moment to prove that he should be a draft pick, or maybe a higher draft pick, to say if he can go on a run and win a national championship. I think that vastly changes who Carson Beck is as a quarterback, because Carson Beck has waited for this moment. He's blown this moment a couple times, and he grew up a lot in this game against Ohio State, and to do it against the defending national champions, to do it against the top defense in the country, where again, he wasn't special, but he did what he had to do, and he did not turn the football over.
I'll leave you with one last thing. For the rest of this season, I'm going to be rooting for Indiana, that's for sure, and the Fighting Kurt Signettis. Is there a team that you are rooting for to win it all? I want another Big Ten team to win 3 years in a row. Is it Oregon? Is it Indiana for you? Is it Ole Miss? Do you have a team that you're going to look forward to at least cheering on a little bit?
Uh,
I know it's not the same. This is a hard question.
it's a tough question. I'll say two things. It would be cool to see Indiana go on a run and do that, but I do have a personal tie to Miami, so it would be cool for that personal tie to see them go ahead and win it. I say those comments very raw, and especially after last night.
Yeah, dude,
But it's not really it's not what I want to say. It's
I get it.
the buy-in to me is not the same. It's not like, oh well, Ohio State lost, I can just root for Miami. No, that's not at all how I look at it. It's just for the personal tie that I have to Miami. That would be, I guess, them or Indiana.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, yeah, I'll be rooting for Indiana. We'll see. If Indiana loses and looks like they just got outmatched and out physicaled, I don't know if that's the correct way to say it, but they physically outmatched would be how I wanted to say it. Would you buy in more to the fact that these teams with buys struggle, and that's something that really needs to be looked into?
I can say yes and I can say no. I think it depends situationally because, Steve, we talked about off air. Last year for Ohio State, they played November 30th, and then they didn't play again until December 21st. And this year for Ohio State, it was December 6th to December 31st. It was 21 days or 25 days. And we saw the complete opposite performances from Ohio State offensively in those games. Oregon, they looked flat. How does Texas Tech look against Oregon? I think these are all going to be big things. Indiana handling a layoff, Indiana handling being a champion, Indiana handling a Heisman, Indiana handling being the favorite. I think different dynamics there. I do think for the playoff that it would help if you expand it where it's an even bracket where everybody plays the first weekend and you have the first 2 rounds on campus. Looking at it that way, where there's not really a bye, just reward the teams with home games.
Yep, I agree.
Reward the teams with home games. Indiana plays the first 2 games on campus. Ohio State plays the first 2 games on campus if they win them, and so on and so forth. I think that would be the way to fix this, where every team in the playoff is playing in that first weekend before Christmas or even the week before that. And then you just move it a week at a time and just continue on that season, give a 2-week break from the conference championship weekend, and then just move forward. I think that would be the easiest way because, yes, it's a reward for Indiana, Ohio State, Georgia, and Texas Tech to have their selection of venue, but more of a reward would be, hey, let's play these games on campus. Like bring Miami up to Columbus. You know what I mean? Bring Alabama to Bloomington. To me, that would be cool for those teams. Like that feels like more of the reward, and then you can keep the quarterfinals and the semifinals at the bowl sites rotationally, and then you can do the same for the national championship game.
Yeah. Oh, that's also interesting. Before we go, when Miami wins this next game, they will not lose at home. Book it. The Rock will be insane. Yeah, they get to play at home. If they make it to the national title game, that would be absolutely lit. It just happened to work out at the perfect time for Miami. We'll see. I mean, we'll see. There's a lot of football left to play. I'll be rooting for Indiana. I know you Canes fans will be having a good time, but if you meet Indiana in the Rock, I think Indiana will give you a game. That's for damn sure. I mean, they're tough. They're physical. Kurt Cignetti's got that team going. There's more football to watch all day today, but until then, until our next show, I don't know when that's going to be now that we've lost. I assumed we'd be back for a preview show. We're not going to be back for that, but congratulations to Miami, all of you fans, for getting back and being the U again. They're back. You have to say they're back. But Happy New Year, everyone. Blake, give a shout out real quickly for your show and where to follow you at, and then we'll get out of here.
Well, Steve, again, I appreciate you having me always. It's always awesome to join your guys' show. If you guys want to follow me on social media, that would be at Blake Biscardi. Our outlet is The Silver Bulletin. So the handle will be T Silver Bulletin, website tsilverbulletin.com, and our podcast is called Saturday Cadence. So you guys can check out all of our coverage there. There's a lot of cool stuff behind the scenes from this whole Cotton Bowl experience on the Twitter, and then also on TikTok, actually, on on my TikTok. Just throw a bunch of videos up there. But highly recommend you guys checking it out. And Steve, always love what you guys are doing and love coming on your show. And it's always great to work together.
Appreciate having you. God bless everyone. Take care. Have a good and happy New Year, and enjoy watching those games today. Peace out. God bless.